The horror genre feels inextricably tied to video games. The medium feels absolutely perfect for scares, but that was not always the case. There is a hot debate on what the first true horror game was, because so many older titles just weren't scary. It took a while before hardware limitations were raised to the point where you'd be too scared to play at night. And of course, what some people consider scary is completely subjective. Hell, when I was like 15, I was scared shitless when me and my friends played the first few hours of Layers of Fear like late at night. Then the next morning we beat the game and I felt genuinely embarrassed for being scared just hours before because of how ridiculous that game is. It's an odd genre, and it so heavily relies on your exact experience with it. But an age-old example of classic old horror is the original Clock Tower. Certainly not the first horror game, but one of the oldest still held in high regard. Clock Tower released in 1995 for the SNES. It was developed by Human Entertainment, a Japanese video game company that started in the 80s. They're best known for their Fire Pro Wrestling series, but have a considerable repertoire under their belt. In 2024, Clock Tower Rewind released for all modern consoles. It was the first time the original game was ever officially released outside of Japan. But a fan translation was released even just 6 years after the original game came out. It's a horror point-and-click adventure game. You control Jennifer as she attempts to escape this spooky manor with her and her close friends intact. The story is surprisingly understated. While there's strong narrative throughline, you're still left guessing at most plot details until the very end. The real draw of the game is the exploration. Journeying from room to room, discovering what you can gain from each, all while avoiding the endlessly iconic Scissor Man. This is a very simple game. It only took me 5 hours to get to the true ending, and I took my time doing so. But I found the entire experience a sheer delight. So first I want to discuss what I found so charming about this release, then I'll get into the additions and revisions made by Rewind specifically. So why don't we just jump into it? The first thing I noticed when I got control of the character is just how slow the game is. Jennifer takes her time as she walks from place to place. You can make her sprint, but she'll lose stamina, which also kind of acts as your health bar. And even her top speed is nothing too fast either. Initially, this was off-putting. One of the biggest criticisms I have with like most older games is just an exhaustingly slow pace. But I soon found the tempo to be incredibly appealing. It stopped you from ever feeling in control or powerful. You feel encumbered, scared, and disadvantaged all the way through. The mansion is deceptively small. At first I thought I'd be running endlessly through these halls, but it's really just 3 main areas with a couple screens each. All the usual pitfalls worse adventure games fall into are easily avoided. Most puzzles are pretty intuitive. I felt like the game almost always knew what I wanted to happen when I click on something. There's a ledge out of reach, I investigate it, then point out the box. Then right away Jennifer is pushing it into place and using it to get up. It almost feels like you're directing Jennifer more than you're playing as her. It's an interesting take I don't often see in horror games these days. Made me feel more engaged than usual. It wasn't a thin stand-in for myself in danger, it felt like I was responsible for her and I wanted to help her. And there are more little features that helped create that feeling. When sprinting, there's a chance that Jennifer will trip and fall. It's purely here to elevate tension during like these chase scenes, which it mildly succeeds at, but it's another case where you just don't have control over her. It feels like you're just giving her directions. As the game goes on, you find a multitude of items. Things like keys, rope, a staff, ham, all sorts of random things. This is pretty standard to the adventure genre, and it all works well here. Puzzles are simple and obvious. The game isn't really about working out what to do, but finding what there is to do next. It is focused on exploration and coming back to rooms with a fresh perspective, rather than like working out a really tough question. Personally, I think this works better, especially for such a bite-sized experience. If the game dragged on much longer, I would like the puzzles to be more challenging, but like this, it's absolutely perfect. The game features an interesting mechanic as you make your way through the mansion. Scissor Man can show up in all sorts of places and begin chasing you. The different ways he appears are always such a fun novelty. Seeing a tile fall and him jump from the ceiling, or emerge from the bathwater under one of Jennifer's dead friends. He then chases you around until you find some sort of hiding spot or deal with him. All the solutions are context sensitive, which is fun. You just run into the rooms closest and see what you can use there. It feels interactive. And finally, there are the multiple endings. When I saw that there was an ending list, I got excited and nervous. I love the idea of multiple endings, and I think it works pretty great for an adventure game like this. Though it usually means that I end up with a crappy one and I have to do some convoluted nonsense to get the good one. But I was again pleasantly surprised. It was so cool to discover the various possibilities throughout the game, and reaching the true ending didn't require some completionist bullshit. It was just logical conclusion of the game. I don't really have too much more to say. I think it's a delightful experience that holds up shockingly well today. Adventure games find themselves struggling nowadays, and I think it's a shame considering how charming they can be. It just feels so nice booting up a remastered SNES game and playing all the way through, almost like someone would have all those years ago. But the version I played isn't the original, it was Rewind. So let's get into what that actually means. The game offers you two options, Rewind mode and Original mode. Personally, I think Rewind is better in like every way, but I love the original is available without any of the quality life changes or new content. But let's get into what some of those changes are. Firstly, there are some small things to smooth over the experience. You heal faster when you wait, just saving you a bit of time. You can run up and down stairs, which you used to only be able to walk on. These things aren't anything crazy, but it just makes everything feel so much better. There are some changes to the game. Scissorman used to only have scripted appearances, but now he can show up randomly. And instead of just teleporting, he actually chases you from room to room, and even up and down the stairs. It feels a lot better this way. You can actually think about where he is and run away from him. The newer rooms and changes from the PlayStation 1 release, First Fear, have been backported into the Super Nintendo version, which is really cool. They also added some extra items, hiding spots, and even events that were originally in the code but never implemented. And what is coolest to me, they got in contact with the developer of a newly made, really popular hack of the game, Clock Tower Deluxe. They worked with him to port over those features into it. Finally, there's a new animated intro and some artwork, which is just beautiful. Personally, all of this is enough for me to call it the definitive version of the game. I think it's the addition to play if you want the original nowadays. None of it breaks away from the SNES release in any crazy way, just small things only fans will really notice. There is a rewind button, which personally I like, but I can imagine other people hating it. But that's just optional. If you don't want it, don't use it. Overall, this is basically all you could want from a release of a classic game. A faithful edition, and a version that improves on the original in very tasteful ways. All packaged together into a beautiful game that's pretty fairly priced in my opinion. Only $20 for this incredibly embellished classic SNES game? That's perfect. I really recommend Clock Tower Rewind. This is a series I knew little about, but now I want to work my way through the rest of the games. All thanks to this 2024 release. Go check it out. And I hope you liked my discussion of it.